I felt that I really wanted to enjoy motherhood, and I just felt like postpartum depression was just killing it. Like, it just made me feel like I was in the most negative place, and I just didn't know what to do.
Pepper, 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 ga, pepper, boo boo. Say hello. Hi. Wave. Uh huh. Nana. Oh, baby. Baby. Oh.
Hello YouTubers, my name is Prisca and you are watching me on my channel Next Level with Prisca. I'm glad that you've joined in to watch me because today we'll be talking about my experience with postpartum depression. So in the year 2019 was the year that I was expecting my son, and the pregnancy was it was an easy journey. It wasn't as it wasn't it was quite smooth. I didn't have any skin breakouts. I didn't have stretch marks. I didn't even have to struggle with baby weight after he was born. I enjoyed the pregnancy throughout. I didn't have many pains. I only had experience like my feet swelling, and that was probably in the third trimester. But it was quite smooth and very easy. I enjoyed being pregnant. I was happy throughout. So my pregnancy was that easy, very jolly and very happy. And my son's name is Takondwa and it means happiness. So I guess we picked out his name when I immediately found out that I was pregnant. So I guess maybe that came along with the pregnancy because I was very giggly, very bubbly. I was always laughing throughout, and I was always in a happy mood. I was never really stressed, and I worked like throughout my pregnancy till a week before I was expecting him. That was the only time I took like a break and said, okay, fine, I am tired. This 9 months has been so long. It was just a week before I was expecting him. So I did everything that I could to um, prepare for him. And before, I had no idea about like antenatal visits. I had no idea that you had to consistently go for antenatal visits throughout your pregnancy. So those are things that were quite new to me, and I didn't know how to prepare, but I did the best that I could. What I wrapped I learned, I tried to learn as much as possible and read so much about childbirth. And so the idea of postpartum depression just never really crossed my mind. I just I I had no idea what postpartum depression was about, but I just did so much research on childbirth and what to do in order for me to prepare um, him coming into the world, and basically just knowing how to buy things around for him and what he needed probably in the first 6 months. But the idea of postpartum depression wasn't something that I really looked into. In our society, does not talk about postpartum depression. So I had no idea that I was ever even going to experience something like that because I didn't know of a friend or family members who had ever talked about their personal experience with postpartum depression. So when I suffered postpartum depression, I was quite confused about whether I'm suffering postpartum depression or it's just in my head, and am I the only one who's going through this? Because I had never known anybody who talked about it. So I was really, really, really conflicted about accepting the fact that that's what I was going through. So it started out probably a few weeks after I gave birth. And what the little that I knew about postpartum depression was that it was a detachment feeling that a mother had with their newborn child. That's all I knew about it. I just thought it was people just not feeling attached to their child, and I just thought maybe it's just something that happens for a short period of time. And that's just how little I knew about postpartum depression. So it started out with me just feeling very low for no reason at all. I would feel like crying. I was so anxious and worried, and I'd panic. Hello, that's my son. I would panic for no reasons. I would be worried about nothing, but I would just feel so worried and anxious, and I couldn't sleep because of the anxiety and constant worrying. And so it was also hard to just juggle how the day to day activities and night activities would be like, because I did not rest. I was constantly feeling afraid for things that I just didn't know may not even happen. So to begin with, I would always like lock the house. I would make sure like from morning till the day ends, the house shouldn't be, doors wouldn't be open, because in my mind I just thought like someone would kidnap my child. I just had this fear that someone can come in and steal my child. I couldn't even take a shower properly because I would feel like someone might just break into my house and steal my child. So it was really hard for me to process those feelings. And I would want to just be, when I would wake up, sometimes I would feel okay and sometimes I wouldn't just feel okay. So sometimes I would be happy and then the next minute I just feel so sad. And it was just an overwhelming feeling that I could not describe, because you know it's like you go from like one emotional feeling, and then in an instant you just feel slapped by this feeling of sadness and an emotional rawness to why am I feeling this way. I couldn't quite understand it. So I didn't know that I had postpartum depression, because I was like, wait, this is not me. I just felt different. I didn't feel like I was myself. I didn't quite feel that I was the same person after giving birth. I just felt like a different person. So sometimes I would tend to think like maybe something just went wrong in the process of me giving birth, because I don't feel the way I normally feel. So I thought maybe there's just something that happened that they didn't tell me about, and this is why I'm feeling this way. And I was mentally and emotional stressed, and also drained, because I couldn't just understand what I was going through. So sometimes I'll just wake up and just feel like, you know what, I'm just so tired of feeling this way. I just want to go back to the hospital and just check that everything was normal, because I had a normal birth. So I couldn't understand why I was feeling that way. And sometimes I'll just feel withdrawn. I just didn't want to be with anyone. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want people to be in my space. I just wanted it to be me and my son. And I didn't really trust really trust my husband to hold the baby, because I would just always feel so fearful that he wasn't careful enough to hold him the right way. I was always just so anxious, and I remember even during bath times for the baby, we would constantly be arguing, because when the baby cries and when that would just trigger my emotions, then I would start screaming and yelling at him and saying you're not doing the right thing. And I would just feel like I don't want him to be around, because I could only trust myself. I could only trust myself. And so I just disliked um yeah, I just disliked being surrounded by people around the yard. So be somebody to clean around the yard, but I just didn't like that person coming around my house because I just felt like he could steal my baby. The cleaner can steal my baby. That's so I was living with that kind of fear. And I would I would feel withdrawn. I would just feel sad. I felt like how I felt wasn't how everybody was feeling. I just felt a disconnect from everybody, and that I was just living in my own world, and this world was like just sad, and it was depressive, and everything was just, the vibe was just completely off. So I felt off about myself. So it later on I just went on internet to just read about postpartum depression. And when I looked into it, I still got more scared because I just didn't want to know, like, read about horrific experiences, because I thought like that's what I probably will go through. I don't want to seem crazy, and I didn't want to feel like, be treated like I'm just like a psycho, like I'm going insane. And I remember at one point where I just thought like, am I going crazy? And that I even know that I'm crazy, and isn't that crazy? So when I had a friend who reached out to me to find out how I was doing, I basically just opened up and said, I haven't been feeling so good because I'm just constantly anxious, I'm just constantly worried. And that's when she told me, like, you know what, I went through the same thing. I even felt worthless on some days, like I'm just not even good enough to be a mom. And that's when we started to really talk, and then I understood in that moment, like, wait, I think people do go through postpartum depression, but no one just wants to talk about it. So in our society, because I'm from Zambia, so our community doesn't really talk about certain issues. So most people tend to be quiet about certain experiences. And I don't know why that is, but I feel that there's this um there's this level of privacy that people have when you are expecting your child. You as a mother should be secluded from the community until the child is mature enough. We, the first 1 2 3 months, you don't really go out with your child. I mean, you can go out, you can step out, but it's just not common to be walking around with a newborn baby who's 3 weeks, 4 weeks, a month old. Even if you need to buy things like groceries and anything for the baby, it's just not a common practice to start moving out with your child. You'd rather just have somebody like do your shopping and get your groceries, ask your husband, your sister. You rather stay indoors. And because of that seclusion, I think even your experience as a mother is not something that you just talk about. I remember when someone was like, don't talk about how your childbirth was, because that's your secret. Everything that you went through, don't talk about how you were crying during labor. That's your secret. So I feel even when you're going through postpartum depression, that's it's your secret, but you're basically suffering alone, you know. And there's also some form of stigma when you are a mother who's gone through postpartum depression. And I think it's because it's the idea of if you're experiencing postpartum depression, then you're mentally ill, and there's that stigma to you're crazy, and there's a stigma of people just don't take it well when you're just not going through when you're going through an abnormal situation. I think it's like you're being treated like an abnormal person. You just don't have your five senses intact. So something is absolutely wrong with you. And people just despise that idea that you're just not okay. So it's very hard for people, women, to confess and say, you know what, I just was not okay. So it took a while for me to just really say that to other people, because I've also had experiences where I shared like um a one-on-one with somebody else who has a child, and I started to open up and say, well, I think I just wasn't even mentally and emotionally okay. And just that facial expression, like, girl, are you saying you were crazy? And I really kind of felt bad, because she thought her immediate response was, well, I know someone who went through postpartum depression, that they had to be taken to some psych, psych hospital. So in some way, she was not open to talk about postpartum depression, because what she was just implying is, probably if you feel that way, then you should have gone to a psych, like that's just for psychos. So I felt kind of bad, but then I thought maybe that's the reason people don't even open up about postpartum depression. And since then, I think in some way I would like to also encourage somebody out there that postpartum depression is just a short experience. It's not going to last forever, because I think those were the questions that I was asking myself, like, how long am I going to keep feeling like this? Because this for me is an emotional and mental burden that I'm carrying. And if I don't feel fit, how will I go back for work? If I don't feel fit, how am I going to pursue the things that I want to pursue? If I don't feel as good as I thought I should be, how will I live for the rest of my life? So postpartum depression doesn't last forever. My son when he turned like 1 year, I think at that time I kind of felt like, you know what, I'm kind of feeling okay, because I wasn't constantly um before I kind of would feel that I would feel good, and then maybe the next 30 minutes or an hour, I would kind of just feel withdrawn from everybody, my husband and people around my home, and I just wanted to be alone. Then after some time, when I take a nap and get up, maybe that's when I kind of feel good, and then it would just be a back and forth thing. But by the time he was a year old, I could actually feel like maybe for a week I would feel okay, then have like this one day, because I would be so excited, like, wow, the past few days I've been feeling awesome. So I think I am getting back to myself. And then just this one day, you wake up and you just kind of feel like, you know what, I just don't feel like this thing, this heaviness of this postpartum depression is ever going to leave. Like, am I going to live like this forever? I just want to encourage somebody out there that postpartum depression does not last forever. By the time my son was a year old, I think I was doing much better than I had a few months before. Like, I could feel myself getting better. I could take walks around the neighborhood without having these insecurities that he might be kidnapped. And I could see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm like, yep, postpartum depression doesn't